Good afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRCmedia. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a little while since we've gotten an update from our legislative delegation, and as always, a lot is going on up at Beacon Hill. Pleased to be joined by the state senator that services the city of Fall River, chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, Senator Michael Rodrigues. Senator Rodrigues, how are you today?
Oh, thank you, Keith. It's great to see you. Obviously, I'm not on Beacon Hill today. I've had the luxury of working from home and doing back-to-back Zoom meetings all day from the comfort of my backyard.
Well, that's good, and I'm glad you had the opportunity to join us here for a
Yeah,
short time to get
yeah,
an update for the people of Fall River. So, one of the big things that has happened just recently is the finalization and approval of an FY 2022 state budget. We've talked about this before. This was more of a normal year in terms of a state budget, and as a chair of Ways and Means on the Senate side, you're the key driver of making sure that the budget process moves forward and gets through the process. Talk about how that was for you this year, and then maybe talk a little bit about how Fall River is going to benefit from the money in the state budget.
absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely a much more traditional and conventional year than last year, so-called FY21 was. Think about a year ago, Keith. Think about where we were exactly 1 year ago today, towards the end of July. Um, you know, with all the uncertainty around the virus, the pandemic, the legislature enacted a 3-month budget to put off the final decision until later on in the fall, when we can have more certainty about what the virus was going to do. What Congress we were waiting for Congress to act, right? What Congress was going to do with some sort of federal support, how the economy was going to react to all the shutdowns and closures, with non-essential employees ordered to stay home and not report to work. Um, and it was quite chaotic for many months. We got through it pretty well. It turned out that we did the right thing by delaying any final decisions until later on in the fall of last year. And that's reflected in the way of Wall Street and our bonding rating agencies, which are very important to the budget. All gave us A+ and thumbs up of how Massachusetts handled its fiscal affairs during the pandemic. Also, what it did was create a situation where we just flowed right into FY22. In January, the governor filed his version of FY22 budget. It's called House 1. In April, the House of Representatives passed their version of an FY22 budget. And in May, we in the Senate passed our version of the FY22 budget. We worked throughout June, even into the beginning of July, trying to reconcile the differences between the House and Senate's version of the budget. We did that successfully. We adopted what we call a conference committee report on the budget. We sent it to the governor's desk, and last Friday, the governor signed the budget, but he also vetoed quite a few sections of the budget. I literally was just on my last Zoom call was with my team at Senate Ways and Means, reviewing all of the governor's vetoes and determining which ones we wanted to sustain and let happen, which ones we wanted to override. It requires a 2/3 vote, a supermajority vote, to override a gubernatorial veto. Later on this afternoon, I will be having a conversation with my good friend and colleague, the House Chair of the Ways and Means Committee, Aaron Michael, for us to develop a plan going forward of how quickly do we want to react to these vetoes. I'm hoping we react next week and override whatever vetoes we're going to override, which, to be honest, are most of them. But I'll be glad that when we break for our August recess, that this budget will be 99.9% behind us. Unlike last year, that it just hung over our head for so long during the pandemic.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Senator, in terms of the numbers, billions of dollars again in this state budget. How will some of those numbers help benefit Fall River? I know a lot more is going into education and some other initiatives. Talk about how Fall River will benefit this coming year.
Fall River will benefit quite a bit in this budget. I say to folks, I'm only going to be chair of Ways and Means Committee for a finite amount of time. You don't have this position forever. It's as long as the Senate president chooses to appoint me to this position. And I'm the first Senate chair of Ways and Means ever from the city of Fall River. There's never been a Ways and Means chair from Fall River. So I'm going to take advantage of this as much as I can to be reasonable, not to be greedy, but to ensure that those areas of state support that Fall River, in my opinion, have been falling behind other areas of the state, we catch up with. It is a $48 billion budget. We are lucky that we have lots of federal dollars, although none of the federal dollars are reflected in this operating budget, but we have about $5 billion federal dollars that we'll be able to invest in one-time investments later on this fall when we deal with the so-called ARPA funds. But areas like you mentioned, education, Chapter 70, which is the state's reimbursement to cities and towns for the K through 12 education system. We increased that line item by about $240 million over FY21, which was about $130 million over FY20. So we're seeing a very significant and steady increase in investment in K through 12 education. Fall River, because of its demographics, because of the fact that it has one of the poorest social economic demographics in the state, receives a much higher percentage, probably the highest, if not definitely one of the top three highest reimbursements percentage of any community in the Commonwealth. I want to say upwards of about $135 million are flowing into Fall River's K through 12 school system, which pays fully for close to 90%. 90% of Fall River schools will be paid for by state dollars. Another area that I focused on since I came into the Senate was public safety, specifically public safety staffing. I can remember Chief Racine in Fall River, when we started this program, saying it was all about, in the police department, it was all about boots on the ground, getting as many boots on the ground, getting their neighborhood patrols, their community policing patrols back up and running again. So we, once again, successfully included multiple millions of dollars in the state budget, of which Fall River will receive upwards of about $1 million again this year for the, I think, 10th year in a row for public safety staffing. Again, Fall River is one of a handful of communities that receives any money for this purpose and receives by far the greatest amount of money in public safety staffing. Other areas of education is Bristol Community College. Bristol Community College has gone from the 16th out of 16 community colleges as far as state reimbursement per full-time equivalent, per FTE, up to number 12 or 13, just over 2 years. We're not going to turn it around overnight, but we're making real, steady material improvements in funding Bristol Community College's bottom line operating budget as it relates to full-time equivalents. And then there's a sundry of other local, called Battleship, Massachusetts. I secured $250,000 in the budget for Battleship, Massachusetts. The last few years, we've secured money for the Children's Museum of Fall River, an amazing place. But, areas that add to the quality of life here in Fall River and the South Coast.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the ARPA funding. There's discussions going on in every community as well. In Fall River, they're talking about how the city is going to spend its allocated amount of ARPA funds. And I know this week you had a hearing earlier this week where the governor testified about spending of the ARPA money. How difficult, in some ways, it's like, oh, it's additional money. It's money that you didn't anticipate 2 years ago getting. But on the other hand, there's a lot of responsibility to make sure that this money is spent in a responsible manner. How difficult do you see this process going on a statewide level going forward?
The process has been a little rocky, to be honest with you, but we're getting a handle on it. Rocky in the way that, first of all, the money just showed up one day, deposited into the state comptroller's account. So imagine waking up one morning and finding $5.3 billion miraculously being deposited into your bank account. That's what happened to us in Massachusetts. And then we entered into a discussion with the governor. We in the legislature wanted to make sure that we exercised our duties and responsibilities as articulated in the Constitution. It is the legislative branch of government that does the appropriating. We are the appropriating body. Unlike the first couple pools of federal money that were really made, really designed about reacting to the pandemic, we left that money under the care, custody, and control of the governor because we were dealing with a public health emergency. We were dealing with a crisis. We were dealing with issues that you needed immediate response to, whether it was issues in our nursing homes and our long-term care facilities. We know what happened at Holyoke Soldier Homes with 73 elder veterans passed away. We know that our first responders needed PPE, personal protective equipment, and how do we buy it, purchase it, distribute it, everything, all that. So that was appropriate that we left those funds under the care, custody, and control of the governor. These ARPA funds are all about recovery. They're not about responding to the pandemic. They're about recovery from the pandemic. And we want to ensure a very fair and equitable recovery so that every citizen of the Commonwealth, regardless of where they live, regardless of their social economic condition, will see an equal and equitable recovery. Nobody is better positioned to do that than we in the legislature. So we had to enact legislation. We called it the sweep bill, where we swept all the money out from under the control of the governor and under the control of the legislature. The actual title was a lot better than that, but we always called it the sweep bill, right? We did that. That's done. Now we're going to begin the process of spending the money, and we wanted to make sure that process is open, that process is transparent, that process is inclusive of everyone, so that we can hear voices and opinions from every stakeholder around the Commonwealth that wants to offer their opinion on how we should spend the money. We had our first hearing, as you said, on Tuesday. We invited the governor. We certainly want to hear what the governor has to say. We invited his Secretary of Administration and Finance, Secretary Mike Heffernan. But we also invited a lot of our friends who we lovingly call our talking head friends. These are the leading economists that we're lucky to have living and working here in Massachusetts. Economists like Dr. Michael Goodman from UMass Dartmouth, like Dr. Alan Clayton Matthews from Northeastern University, the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, experts from nationally, the National Council on State Legislators, and the Pew Foundation, all coming to testify to us to talk about a process, how inclusive, how open, how fast should we engage in this process, and give us some of the best practices that other states are using around the country. Because there's nothing wrong with emulating, good practice. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, right?
Yeah.
So that happened on Tuesday. We have another hearing next week, next Tuesday. where we will be specifically focused on labor and workforce development issues. We have other hearings scheduled that will deal with public health and healthcare issues, food insecurity, housing instability, all of the areas that we think that there deserves to be some significant investment. Now, these are one-time dollars, remember, Keith.
Right.
So we are going to be very careful that we do not spend these dollars on programs, on salaries, that need to be sustained in the future. These will be infrastructure investments, capital investments, or investments that are going to really create generational change in some of these areas.
Yeah. I want to shift gears briefly before I let you go. Also this week, actually, as we're recording this, the House is voting on a bill to expand gambling in Massachusetts that would involve sports gambling.
Yep.
I know there's been different iterations of this in the legislature in the past. Is this something we can expect to see here in Massachusetts maybe in the coming year or so?
Yes, I think so. I think the House, as you said, literally, as we're doing this interview, they're in session voting on their version of sports gaming, online sports betting. They will, I would assume, complete their debate and vote on it by this evening. They'll ship it over to us in the Senate. We will work on it throughout our summer recess in August, and by the fall, I think we're going to come back with our own version of the bill. It's pretty complicated. How many licenses do you provide? What type of consumer protections? Do you allow credit cards to be used for gaming? Do you not allow credit cards and only allow debit cards? Do you allow betting on collegiate sports, amateur sports? Do you allow betting on international sports, the Olympics? Do you allow betting from inside of venues? So in other words, if you're at Fenway Park, are you allowed to bet on the Red Sox, while you're sitting there at Fenway Park? All of these questions. And then it comes down to money, right? It comes down to what's in it for the Commonwealth. I've made it very clear throughout this preliminary debate that my focus and my interest is on one thing: the biggest return for the taxpayers of the Commonwealth. What's going to net the greatest return in the form of dollars for the Commonwealth? That's what I'm focused on. And how do you make money off? How does the state make money off sports betting? Well, first of all, license fees, right? We're gonna create different kind of licenses. We charge fees for those licenses. Second is the tax rate on winnings. What is the tax rate? And we are researching because we are one of the last states to get into this, which is good in the way of the fact that we can look at what other states have done. We can adopt their best practices. We have conversations with our colleagues in other states all the time to say, Senator Tebow, what did you do in Arizona, that you wish you didn't do? What would you have done differently now that you have a year or two or five under your belt? What would you have changed? What are the pitfalls we need to look out for? We did this with the marijuana legislation, and we have probably one of the best pieces of marijuana legislation in the country. We've done this with our general casino legislation, with probably one of the best casino bills in the country, and we're going to do the same with sports gaming.
Yeah. Let me just ask you finally, any other pieces of legislation that's on your radar as we head toward the second half of 2021?
A couple bills that are on my radar. First of all, some with local implications. The Genocide Education Act, or the so-called Holocaust Education Act. I've worked very closely with Professor Ron Wiseman from Bristol Community College, and we saw what happened in Duxbury, Mass, earlier this year, with anti-Semitic terms being used, on the football field. So I'm working on that. Also, we are working on so-called voting reforms, mail-in voting, early voting. We adopted special rules during the pandemic, and we've extended those rules temporarily through the end of the year. And now we are going to have a debate on what do we want to do? How do we want to make permanent the way our elections are handled? What lessons have we learned during the pandemic? What worked? What didn't work? And those are a few of the big bills that I'll be focused on.
All right, Senator Michael Rodrigues, as always, thank you for taking the time to speak with us, and we hope we'll catch up again soon. Thank you.
And
I
I'm
appreciate
sorry
it.
I didn't have a shirt and tie on like you, Keith. You look
It's
good.
yeah, it's usually the other way around. Usually you're all well dressed, and I'm,
I know. So this whole new world, if we just a second, I mean, we live in a new world now, right? And
yeah.
I am at the State House 3-4 days a week at least. But on a day like today, where I had like 8 Zoom meetings, okay, it's just easier for me to do it from home. It's more efficient and it's more comfortable. I'm sitting in my shorts and in my backyard, and I'm glad that we were able to to have this conversation so casually.
Absolutely. All right, Senator, as always,
Yeah.
Thank you. Take care.
You got it, Keith. Thank you for all you do. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. And thank you for joining us today here on FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great day.